Greetings viewers, welcome to another segment of OERLive Leaderspeak. And in this episode, we have none other than Mr. Hemanth, CEO of Business Gateways. Mr. Hemanth, it's a pleasure having you with us today. The first question would be, Business Gateways is an organization that strives to implement nationwide tech-driven projects for growth and development. Could you shed some light on how you are achieving digital acceleration in line with Oman 2040 vision guidelines?
Business Gateways as a concept, as a strategy, when we started evolving it way back in 2010, the whole purpose was to, if I may use the word, digital transformation from those days itself. Because when we formed this particular company, the whole idea was to look at ways and means to proactively drive platforms in the country, okay, which can actually make an impact for the whole nation as such. So starting from our initial concept of what we called as a national business framework that we established in 2010, Business Gateways has really been focusing a lot on getting into the B2B space of Oman and trying to bring on board the core visibilities that the country needs in terms of, the SMEs of the country, the geo zones that are basically spread out. And so that journey has really taught us a lot when it comes to the digital transformation model. So if we fast forward ourselves now, almost 10, 12 years now in terms of what we've been working on, the concept of digital transformation has really taken on in Oman, as you know, and the whole purpose from the governmental side of it is also there is a lot of clarity in terms of where the country needs to go when it comes to the digital transformation journey. So if you look at it, we have e-Oman concept, which is as an initiative that has been brought in, and the government has broadly brought this into 6 pillars, starting from digitizing the whole society to getting all the e-services on board into the country, improving the infrastructure of Oman from the IT perspective. So all these things are working in parallel, and this is quite exciting because when we look at it from a strategic perspective, we see that there is a huge room and opportunity for companies to take on these pillars independently and drive the services that are aligned to the Vision 2040 of where they really want to go. So I believe that the government is looking at digitizing almost 50 plus entities to be digitally transformed by 2024-25. So which is not too far. It's quite there, but I think they're getting there, going by the kind of opportunities that are being shown by the government nowadays to focus on. Because at the end of the day, digital transformation all kind of culminate into what we call as the rank of Oman in the world economic models, right? Whether it's doing business, ease of doing business, looking at Oman's competitive index, etc. All the digital transformation journeys that Vision 2040 wants to achieve is concentrating on eventually making the impact at that particular point. So the challenge is to bring from grassroots, not just as organizations, companies, but also for citizens to embrace the services and the models that are there. And as I said, it's a cultural issue. Yeah? So there are a lot of cultural barriers that we have to break through and get everybody the confidence and the comfort that is required to embrace Oman's digital transformation as such. So we're getting there. On Business Gateways as such, from our strategic perspective, what we want to do is to listen very hard to what the government looks, because we fundamentally focus on our stakeholders as government. All our experience has been to drive platforms which are more related to making an impact for the government. So we have seen, and we are in fact engaging with a lot of governmental entities now, looking at various ways in which we can actually support them as an enabler in terms of strategizing and supporting them towards this particular goal of where we go. It's not just Business Gateways, but I'm pretty sure all IT companies in Oman have this opportunity where listening and understanding and aligning themselves to Vision 2040 would make a huge difference collectively as a win-win for both the government and the private sector to be brought in.
You implemented a national subsidy system, NSS, in Oman in 2018. Could you elaborate on how this benefits the public sector in terms of subsidy tracking, data collection, and as well as data privacy?
The national subsidy system is an interesting project, actually. It was it started off as a fuel subsidy system, okay, and way back in 2017 when the economy of the country was going through its own turmoil, there was a need for the government to remove the subsidies that where you and I pay for the fuel, etc. The cost of the fuel was already highly subsidized to all of us, both expatriates and to the citizens. So it was a decision to remove that subsidy. So once that decision was to be made, the government was gracious enough to realize that there is always a strata of society, especially Omani citizens, who will not be able to take that pressure of that subsidy removal which is there. So the whole purpose of a subsidy system was to build that safety net. So individuals don't, or at least cushioned or isolated from those variations that are expected from any other country. Usually fuel prices are never constant. They are always varying based on the multiple indicators that are there. But to allow that strata of society to actually be isolated from that, they wanted to create a particular platform to do that. So that's how the national subsidy system was actually incepted. And it was initially called the fuel subsidy, but then the name changed later to national subsidy, simply because once the platform is being built, we realized that it's not going to stop with the fuel subsidy. A subsidy is a broad term, which the government always supports the citizens that are there. So that's how we did it. And so Business Gateways, we were tasked with the concept and architecture of the platform, and we built it up from ground up. And today it's a very successful platform with more than 500,000 citizens who are actually registered on the system. And the complexity of a system behind this is more from the back-end perspective. So be it from a citizenship network perspective, by enabling them to see their own subsidy levels that are there, how much they're gaining out of it, what kind of transactions are happening. I really have to thank the government's buy-in into a system of this nature, because this was led by the National Subsidy System Committee, and we had the ROP involved. We had all the fuel marketing companies like Almaha, Shell, everybody involved in this particular project, and even the Ministry of Social Development. All of them were there, are still there, of course. And what happens there is that the entire transactions are being tracked by Business Gateways, and we manage the entire platform from the back-end perspective. So it's a huge learning for us, more from a citizenship space, from that particular perspective. And today that success of fuel subsidy moved to the electricity subsidy. So the government was a little more confident to bring this electricity subsidy on board, and we are expecting other subsidies also very soon to be added to this particular platform. There are a lot of discussions going on in the government. So we don't we don't get into the governance of it, in the sense the decision in terms of the pricing structures, policy making, all that. We don't get into it. We are more like the engine room guys. We handle the platform on behalf of the government.
You've also had a very successful implementation on the Invest in Oman portal. And could you tell us how the investment in the country is bolstered both locally and internationally with this?
Yeah, see, investment is a different space, which is there. And the erstwhile, before it was the ITRA, when they kind of commenced this particular platform, and then now it's taken over by the Ministry of Commerce, Investment, Industry and Investment Promotion. Basically, the core requirement is in Oman, we always had a lot of silos of investment opportunities that are there between various sectors and things like that. The Invest in Oman portal is supposed to bring holistically everybody onto a single window model. So by doing that, at least from an investor's perspective, who are both from whether you're talking local investments or international investments to come in, they have one point of understanding the opportunities that are there in the country. And this obviously leads to investment facilitation, because it's not about just showcasing the investment to the potential investors who are far away. It's also to empower them and enable them to be handheld through a facilitation process, where they can get into the country's process of the machinery of taking them through the investment journey as such. So the Invest in Oman platform is primarily for that. And we have seen a lot of good reviews that have come out of that. And Oman and Ministry of Commerce is really now doing an exceptional role in highlighting Oman to the international community as they're very aggressive now in terms of taking it forward. And platforms like this enable them to do that, because platforms like this, once you go in and propagate, you have a platform for these investors to come in, view it, so that e-enablement of that is basically happening on this system.
In alignment with what you have done, creating e-portals for the government in Oman, let's talk about in-country value. So can you tell us more about the ICV initiatives brought about by business gateways, and what are your strategies for the ever-evolving IT sector and its demands, and your future expansion in the Sultanate?
ICV, as you know, in-country value, it's also called local development worldwide. It's one of the buzzwords today, especially in in terms of the resource-intensive countries and resource-intensive sectors worldwide. There's a lot of learning that's going into the concept of an ICV model. Basically, what it eventually culminates into is retention of spend in country. That's what it means. So when there is a spend happening, how much of it can be basically retained within the country. That's why it's called in-country value model, because it has to be retained, which also supports the local industries, and also from a citizenship perspective. That's where Omanization fits in as well in the broad picture. So it's not just the spend, it's also to do with the skill sets, it's to do with the R&D, excuse me. So it has to do with the R&D, etc., to be brought in. And when you look at Oman, Oman is really advanced, fairly advanced when it comes to few countries who are actually mature when it comes to the ICV models worldwide. And we can be proud of that in Oman. And thanks to the leadership from the oil and gas industry, they took the leadership in terms of getting this way back in 2012 range, where the whole ICV concept was evolved, and it's really matured a lot. And now we are seeing the same thrust coming into other sectors as well, who are also embracing into it. We as business gateways, when we look at our role in the ICV platform, one of the flagship projects that we do is the JSRS, which is the Joint Supplier Registration System on behalf of the oil and gas industry, where we have the entire supply chain models and the procurement systems on board this platform. So one of the key areas as far as ICV goes here is that we use the system, thanks to the mandate of the Ministry of Energy and Minerals, to make sure that the ICV obligations that are given by the operators in terms of the spend has to be given to, let's say, SMEs and the local community contractors in the country. So one direction is the mandate, of course, that's 10%, 20%, whatever the mandate that the government provides per contract. The other challenge for that mandate, implementing that, would be the monitoring aspect of it. How does this actually percolate? How does the grassroots SMEs actually, how do they benefit from this whole thing, which was the challenge. So that's what the JSRS does. It kind of gives them a monitoring platform which helps to trickle down the spend across to the SMEs of the country, and the whole thing is transparent, and everybody is able to see what exactly is the monitoring models. So that's what is happening as a platform that business gateways as we support from enabling the ICV aspect of it. Today we are also looking at discussing the same ICV strategy with other industries and sectors as well. So we are actually engaging with a lot of organizations who want to understand how ICV can be holistically taken. A lot of learning from the oil and gas sector, but translating it and localizing it to the respective challenges that are faced by different sectors in Oman. But at the end of the day, we all should understand that ICV is a national objective. It's not just a sector-driven objective. And two things will have to happen here. One is we should be able to achieve the national objective. Number two is it should percolate uniformly to the grassroots of the country. So the challenge now is to build a national ICV policy, not an industry-specific ICV policy, is to build a national ICV policy. And I believe that the governments have already started working on that in order to create that framework at a national level. So once that framework is in place, once the governance structures are clear in terms of what kind of indicators go into it, then we come into the play, not only us as IT companies, to come in and start enabling that into the picture. So we are quite excited to know that a lot of work is going into it. And very soon we hope that some kind of a national policy comes into play, and which will then be adapted by everyone concerned. So that's from the ICV side of things. Business Gateways as an organization, we have learnt a lot. We are still learning because we are mostly, as I said, enablers to the government in terms of platforms. So what is our strength is basically to not only to develop platforms but also to operate it on behalf of the government, because one thing is creating platforms, another one is to operate it, to make sure that these platforms actually drive in the value over a period of time. It's a long-term models that we put in place. So it's more of a build and operate strength where we come into play. So in that sense, we are not typically an IT service provider. We are more technology partners to the government and to the other stakeholders that we work with. And that's where we are, we swim in that space of our strengths which are there. So we, as a plan going forward, obviously due to this pandemic issues, everything kind of, took a backstage. But now we are going back, we are flexing our muscles to go deep dive into the industries in Oman, to further engage. We are already working on that across multiple areas. And so the core thing, what we also want to do is we want to proactively develop platforms, more platforms that can support high-level impact in the country, because we want other platforms also to come up, certain things like in terms of startups and things like that, in terms of because we know the impetus on those areas that are coming. How can we support that? How can we engage on that part of it? So we are working hard to build those kind of ecosystems that would very soon be launched. And from an international perspective, we want to take the learnings that we have as a company here to the worldwide models. We have almost a 75 to 80% Omanization today in Oman, and we are very proud of the team that we have. I am personally proud of the team that we have. We are working towards the goal of what the government wants, and let's hope for the best, how it goes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hemanth, for being on OERLive Leaderspeak, and we wish you all the best for all the future projects coming your way with Business Gateways.